How's it going, everybody? Today we're going to be going over one of the most foundational aspects of getting you to play songs faster, and that is chords. Now what chords are is when we strum multiple strings at the same time or play multiple notes at the same time in order to create harmony. To play chords, you need to understand how to read a chord chart. Now I'm going to throw up a chord chart on screen now, and it's as if our guitar was vertical like this, with the neck pointed to the ceiling. Now with that, the 6 vertical lines are your strings. The far left line is your low E string, and the one to the far right is your high E string, or your thinnest string. Now they follow the strings in order, from left to right: Eddie, 8, Dynamite, Good, Bye, Eddie, E, A, D, G, B, and E. The horizontal lines are your frets, and for this chart it's either going to be the first 3 or 4 frets. The dots on the lines represent where we are going to put our fingers, and sometimes there's numbers on them, either on the dots themselves or above and below the chart. Those are finger numbers, again 1, 2, 3, 4, which tells us what fingers we're going to place for those specific dots. Above the chart, you might see some X's or O's. The X's tell us what strings we're not going to be strumming, and the O's tell us the open strings that we'll be strumming with the chord. The first chords we're going to be going over today is E minor and E. Now, in order to make an E minor, I'm going to throw a chord chart on screen now. We're going to find our finger numbers, which is our second and third finger. We're going to place our second finger on the A string, which is the second string down, on the second fret, that second box there. Then our third finger is going to go underneath that on the second fret of the D string. Remember to keep your thumb up, pointed up, and we're just going to strum down on all the strings. The next chord we're going to be going over is E major. Now you're going to keep this shape for the E minor here. These fingers stay exactly the same. You're going to take your first finger and you're going to place it on the G string on the first fret. Now the G string again is the 4th string down, and we're going to strum all the strings again. If it's an E chord or E minor chord, it's from the low E string down. The next chord we're going to be going over is the A minor chord. Now in order to make an A minor chord, we're going to keep this shape right here. We're just going to move each finger down 1 string each. So our second finger is going to be on the D string 2nd fret, our third finger is on the G string 2nd fret, and our first finger again is on the 1st string of the 1st fret. The next chord we're going to make after that is an A major chord. We're going to take off our first finger and place our pinky down on the B string 2nd fret, and we're going to strum from the A string down. If it's an A chord, it's from the A string down. Now we're going to go back to that A minor chord, and we're going to take our third finger and play a C chord, and we're going to place the third finger on the 3rd fret of the A string. Now this one doesn't follow the logic of what strings we're strumming as the ones before, where it's the E chord, E string down, A chord, A string down, but for this one, strum from the A string down, or the lowest note you're playing. That's typically the rule of thumb. Now you've learned your first 4 chords: E major, E minor, A minor, A major, 5 chords, and then C major. Now the common mistakes when learning to play these chords is a lot of the times people get screwed up on using their fingertips when playing, or using kind of the padding of your finger when fretting these chords. We want to make sure our wrist is forward, our thumb is on the back pointed up, and make sure we're on our fingertips. If we're not on our fingertips, it'll sound something like this. And and we don't want that. So we got to make sure to bring the wrist more forward and to be more on the fingertips. A good way to practice this is, if it is sounding kind of wonky like that, is try to pluck through the individual strings and see which strings specifically are not ringing out. So let's go through that. So it's this D string right here. So we're gonna bring our wrist forward, and what was happening was my third finger, the pad of it was touching the D string when it should only be touching the A string. So if I bring that wrist forward and go more on my fingertips, it will be flush. And each note should ring out by that. The last chords we're gonna go over today is an F chord. And it's very similar to C, just a few fingers are changing. We're going to place our first finger on the first fret of the B string, our second finger on the second fret of the G string, our pinky on the third fret of the D string, and our third finger on the third fret of the A string. We're going to strum from the A string down. Now this one's a little weird because we have to take our first finger and lightly touch the string underneath it in order to mute it. If it doesn't mute it, it's not the end of the world, but that's our goal, is to mute it. So let's strum that from the A string down. Now the next chord we're going to learn is a G chord. G can kind of be tricky for beginners, so we're going to take our second finger and place it on the third fret of the low E string. We're going to take our first finger and place it on the second fret of the A string. And now these two fingers are both going to go on the third fret. Your third finger on the B string third fret, and your pinky on the high E string third fret. Now when you're doing that, I like to keep them together so they're touching at the side when you curl them. And we're going to place those together, place these two, and we're going to strum it from the E string down. Now the last two chords are D and D minor. We're going to learn a D chord right here. We're going to take our first finger and place it on the second fret of the G string, our second finger and place it on the high E string second fret, and then our third finger on the B string third fret. And remember to keep that forward wrist. This is the easy one to, since the fingers are so close together, to not ring out right. But we're going to strum this one, a D chord, from the D string down. Now we want to go and play a D minor chord, which this one's fairly similar. We want to take our first finger and place on the high E string, first fret, our second finger place on the second fret of the G string, and our third finger on the third fret of the B string. And we're going to strum from the D string down as well. And that's all 8 chords to get you start playing songs really fast. We have 2 types of chords, a major and minor chord. If I just say the letter name by itself, that means a major chord. If you see a chord with a lowercase m beside it, that means minor chord. Typically, the rule of thumb is a major chord sounds happy, a minor chord sounds sad. Now we're going to work on switching these chords and playing our first song. The song is Take a Walk on the Wild Side by Lou Reed, and it's a really easy song. We're going to play a C chord, which again is third finger on the A string, second finger on the D string, second fret, and our first finger on the first fret of the B string here. And I'll have the chord chart up just so you can see it. And we're going to strum this from the A string down, and we're going to strum it 1 time and count to 4. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to switch to an F chord. So the way to switch from a C to an F is take your second finger, move it down 1 string onto the G string second fret. Our pinky is going to go down on the D string third fret, and that is a F chord. And we're going to strum it down and count to 4 again. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to go back to C. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And when you're strumming, just let the pick glide down the strings. Don't try to force it or anything like that. The tip of your pick should just glide down those strings very softly when you're playing that. Now we're going to work on some other chord switches. We're going to work on G, and we're going to work on D. So when switching from G to D, our third finger is exactly in the same place. That means that it's a much easier switch to do. So for instance, when I'm changing from G, I'm just going to take off my pinky and go with these two fingers onto the second fret of the G and E respectively and strum down from that. Our third finger is again staying in the exact same place. And when I go back to G, put down my pinky, move these two fingers where they need to go. And that is all for the chord switches. There's much more chord switches than that, but it's something you could practice at home with all your chords. Practice combining the different chords when switching between them and go from there. Make sure you're giving yourself enough time to make these chords. So again, the rule is just count to 4 when you're switching between them to start, and then once you get pretty comfortable with that, lower the amount of time you're giving yourself to switch between the chords. So for instance, instead of 4 seconds, give yourself 3 seconds or give yourself 2 seconds. And once you get that, build it up, and then eventually you should be able to get these chord switches in under a second. And that's all for beginner chords.